Hey Kate, just watched your video. What I would recommend doing is probably just leaving the coffee out of the kit and giving instructions on how to do it for the customer. Um, I think what you're going to get into is if you try to add the coffee to the wort before it goes through fermentation, it's not going to turn out the same way it is if you add the coffee to secondary. I was doing a little bit of reading in the Mitch Steele IPA book, and one of the things that he talks about in there, as far as like with hops, is they go through a chemical process during fermentation, and it causes them to lose some of their bittering and aroma qualities, especially like the. Um, that's why you want a dry hop to get a lot of flavor and aroma, because a lot of the flavor and aroma gets basically chemically changed during the wort fermentation process. And I think you're going to probably run into the same thing with the coffee a little bit. Maybe not as much, but probably better off just leaving the coffee out and giving the customer instructions on how to cold brew the coffee and put it in, either if they're going to do it in the cube and not do a secondary, just tell them to let the cube ferment out for at least a week, maybe two, and then just add the coffee to that, and then bottle it or keg it or whatever they're going to do. Or maybe if they're kegging it, just add it straight to the keg and then rack on top of it. So that would kind of be like doing it in a secondary. That would probably be my recommendation with it. So hopefully that helps you out. You could also maybe play around with coffee malt or some other chocolate dark malts and try to duplicate the flavor, but it's not going to turn out exactly the same as real coffee is. Also, looking at some of the other posts, one of the things I read about putting brewed coffee in your beer versus cold steeping it is the hot the hot brewed coffee puts a lot more astringency into the beer because you're extracting at a higher temperature and you're extracting a lot more astringency from the coffee, versus cold brewing it, you're not extracting that astringency. So I would recommend not telling them to brew the coffee through their coffee pot and then add it to it. Um, as far as grind, that's kind of one of those things. It's basically if they're grinding whole beans, just tell them to grind it to whatever fine uh, coarseness that they do their coffee when they drink it. Because I know I've put pre-ground espresso in a couple of mine, and it's just like basically like powder, and it extracts a lot more flavor from the bean. Obviously, the finer you grind the coffee bean, the more you're going to extract as far as flavor and stuff goes. But I would just give instructions on whatever you're doing that works for you, because it's your beer and your particular grind is producing the end result of what you're making there. So I would just tell them whatever you want to whatever you're doing, just pass it along to the customer and tell them to add it to secondary. I hope that helps you out. Cheers.